All right, guys, we're going to get going here. So excited to be with you. Excited to have 4 people in the room with me, and we got I don't know how many online, 4 or 5, something like that. So uh, anyway, excited. So before we get started, though, any wins or successes? And I think you guys that are online on Zoom, I think I've left it to where you can unmute yourself. At least I tried to this time. So any wins or successes? What good things are happening for people? Oh, really? Okay. Nothing, huh?
Hey Russ, it's Sean.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I have a friend that called me yesterday. He wants to list his house and purchase a house for over 700,000.
Nice. That's a good win.
So we'll take it.
Yeah. Awesome. Congrats. That's way cool. All right. Well, good. Good deal. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. So we're going to be talking about, actually, let me do this. So everyone that's on the chat box, this class doesn't get CE credit, but counts towards the peak agent training. So if you will, those that are on Zoom, the people that are here, I'm going to pass around the sign-in sheet. You guys that are on Zoom, just throw your name in there. I don't need a license number or anything because there's no CE for this one, but just so that I can keep track of who attended the class. So that's awesome. So thank you for putting that on there. All right. So here's what we're going to be doing today. So what we're going to be talking about today is lead generation. Now, as we go through and talk about that in terms of generating leads, here's kind of the idea for me. And Ryan, I think this is probably your first class with me, right?
I was on Zoom.
You were on Zoom.
A couple of times.
Oh, okay. When Rick told me your name, I was like, that's familiar, but that's probably why.
Just the past couple of weeks.
Okay, cool. And Aaron, same with you. You've been online as well, right? So perfect. So here's what we're going to do, though, is the idea for me on this lead generation is what I want to accomplish with this is really about helping you to just learn how to convert those. So we're going to be talking about how to generate leads, but also part of what I want to be doing is hitting with you on in terms of just how to do it effectively and things. So that what we can do is turn it into business, basically. And in fact, I had a, I don't know, was it last week, Rebecca, you and I got together? Yeah. So Rebecca and I just met one-on-one in here in this room one day, and just we were talking about how to prospect and some of those things. And ultimately for me, that's where my excitement comes from, is after the next day, I think it was, right? She came back and she's like, all right, so ask me how it went. And I said, how'd it go? So tell these guys how it went.
So I bombed like 30 phone calls, and that was good because it gave me some experience, but I got an appointment out of it. And so I went to that on Monday, and the lady's divorcing. Her husband wants to get advice from her attorney, but promises that she will use me when they decide to sell the house. So.
Yeah, which is awesome. So yeah. It's so cool. So that's kind of the idea for me. Is for me, that's where I love hearing the successes and things. So for me, think about it is that's kind of my objective of today, is what I want to accomplish from today is basically to have you be able to leave here and feel like you've got a little bit more confidence in how to go and convert some prospecting into appointments is really what we want to do. So the other thing I have to just mention to you that is kind of weird to me with this, so we're trying to stay 6 feet apart in those that are here, and it's just interesting because when I first started training, the guy that trained me in training, like in a lot of the stuff that I'm training you guys on, one of the first thing that he trained me is, which we're pretty much doing this part of it, but he said, you need to have only the number of seats in the room that you have people. And in fact, he said, even set it up for 10% less than the number of people you anticipate coming to the class. And the idea of that being, you want it to look like more people showed up than what you were expecting. So you set up fewer chairs than what you expect, so that as people come, you're having to go get chairs, so that it feels like to the people that are there, like, oh, more people are showing up. Because if you stop and think about times when you've been to and like half the seats are empty, you're kind of looking around going, well, where is everybody? Like, obviously they expected X number of people, whatever. So anyway, but the other piece of it, that part we've kind of done, but the other piece of it was he said the chairs need to be like so close to each other that it makes the people a little uncomfortable to sit that close to somebody, and maybe you guys are. So if you guys are too close, spread out, Rebecca. So I'm just kidding. But so it's just kind of weird to me to do it as a like, okay, we got to be 6 feet apart from each other, because it's totally opposite of the way I was trained to get a good response from your class. So anyway, just, I don't know why I had to throw that in, but did. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about this. So, but here's where I'm going to start with it, is I'm going to start by writing some stuff up on the board here, and I've got 2 cameras going for you guys that are online, so hopefully you can see this one, but if not, then just have to listen as I explain. So I'm going to draw up here something that is, this is the learning curve, okay? So think of it as half of a bell curve. But in the process that you're going to go through as you learn anything, or as you master anything, is always going to follow this curve. Now, you'll notice on here, I'm going to break this down into 4 different areas. But what you will notice on this is that at first, on this learning curve, nothing changes. So think of it as anytime you are learning a new skill, what is going to happen is something similar to this. Meaning, as you learn a new skill, you'll start to work on and you'll practice this new skill. And as you work on this new skill, nothing changes. So think of it in terms of sports. You start working on this new whatever skill it is for the sport, and as you work on it, like nothing changes. Everything just kind of, like you're working on it, but you're still not getting any better at the sport. Is basically what it's saying. But then all of a sudden, what will happen is you experience this steep run up, meaning all of a sudden you make great progress on it. And then actually, if we were to continue on, what ends up happening is there's a slight decline, but then you should be able to continue along at a higher level. Well, that's what the process is going to look like for you in getting started in real estate. For those of you, which most of you are newer to real estate or new, this is what it's going to look like. Is early on, it's going to feel like I'm doing all this stuff, but nothing is changing. But then all of a sudden, you're going to have this big run up. Now, let me break this down into these 4 areas here. So as you start into real estate and you start on this path, what it's going to do is it's going to look like this, so this learning curve, but that is broken down into 4 different areas. And the first area up here is what we would call the activities phase. So this first section is what would be considered as the activities phase. Now, during the activities phase, how much money are you making during the activities phase? Yeah, none. So to some extent, what we are doing today would be considered this activities phase. And very normal for somebody once they get their real estate license, and Rebecca, if I pick on you a little bit, is that all right?
That's all right.
Because to some extent, the conversation she and I had last week, and she didn't realize this is what she was saying, but this is what she was saying to me, is I've been going to class and kind of getting some stuff learning, but it's time to get going. It's kind of really what she was saying. Well, what I interpreted that is what she was telling me is she's been stuck in this activities phase. Very normal for an agent to get stuck in this activities phase. Because as we've talked about in the past, when you go to real estate school, in real estate school, what did they teach you? That's it. They taught you how to pass the test. They weren't teaching you how to go out and make money in this business. They were just teaching you, here's basically how to stay out of jail and how to go pass the test, is really what they were teaching you. Well, so now my job becomes to teach you how to do it. Well, because in real estate school, they didn't really teach you how to go make money. We go get our license, we come, and part of the challenge we have is because we are independent contractors, most of the jobs you've ever had prior to, if you were an employee, what happened is you showed up and then they had like this orientation and they put you with somebody and said, okay, they're going to teach you how to do it. And all this stuff. Well, real estate, you're a 1099 contractor. You're an independent contractor. Well, as a result of that, as a company, legally, we can't tell you what to do. Now, to some extent, that gets a little bit overboard, meaning like in California, an agent sued a real estate company because they wanted their overtime. They wanted their overtime paid. And the company was like, what do you mean your overtime paid? Like, you are a independent contractor. We don't pay you, and you just do whatever you want to do. Well, they tried to say that the company was treating them like an employee, and therefore, because of that, that they were owed compensation for it. Well, that didn't work out. But because of that, though, it sent this fear, these shockwaves throughout real estate of like, almost even at one point, the recommendation was that if I was going to teach a class to you, that what I should do is at the start of the class is saying, start it by saying, you don't have to do anything that I talk about today. And these are all just recommendations and like all this silly stuff that was all fear-based about, we don't want them to think they're employees. Well, so because of that, because you're independent contractors, we don't tell you what time to show up. We don't tell you when to go home. We don't tell you like anything. And so as a result of that, unfortunately, it kind of hurts new agents because you're so much kind of like, yeah, just, we're here to help. Let us know what you need. But because of that, the agents end up not doing a whole lot of anything, or said what I'm trying to say to you is we get stuck in this activity space. During this activity phase is, well, I need to learn how to fill out a contract. And so we'll go spend a bunch of time studying or reading through the contract. Or we'll say, I need to figure out how to do a CMA. And then we will go and do that. And in fact, even you get on a phone and somebody says, yeah, I guess, if you wanted to drop off what my home value is, we hang up, and then when we after that one call, we go, well, I better go research and do a CMA. That's all the activities phase is this. Well, I got to learn how to get into the office, and what systems do we have? How do I use the systems? And how do I use my phone? And where's my desk? And all of these things are the activities phase. Now remember how much money you're making during the activities phase. And see, the biggest challenge, and what I'm hoping for you guys today to learn out of this is, I got to get you to realize you should not be in this phase for more than a week or two, 3 max. Is that you should be in this activities phase of just like, well, I got to kind of get stuff settled, and I got to order my business cards, and I got to And part of what I want you to realize too, all of those things are just excuses in your mind. Meaning, the job of your brain or your mind is to protect you. And you're now in a scenario where, okay, you've got to go out and start to talk to people and strangers. And a lot of times, we are afraid of that because we were growing up. If you have children or you were a child, what did your parent tell you, or what do you as a parent tell your kids about strangers? Yeah, stay away. And now you're in a business where we're told, go talk to strangers, which now we know where the fear comes from is because you were brought up of don't do that, it's dangerous. So your brain is telling you don't go do it. And so as a result, when we get an opportunity to do these activities-based things, we'll gladly go and do them because it's keeping us safe. That make sense? Okay. So during the activities phase is where and notice I said there, you need to spend some time there, but don't overspend time there, because if you do, it then is going to hurt you in the long run. All right. So the next phase of this is what we would call the contact phase. Now, in the contact phase, you'll notice on this, there starts to be a little bit of a liftoff in here, but not much. Now, I'm going to share with you an experience from me and how I really learned and understood all of this. So when I got my license, which it was coming up on 25 years, not quite yet, but coming up to 25 years. And I remember that, so growing up, I just was always the type of a person, employee, that when I would get a job, I would go to the owner or my boss or whoever at the company, and I would say, okay, tell me what to do. And they would tell me, go do this, and then I would go do it. And then as soon as I was done, I'd go find whoever the boss was and say, all right, now what should I do? because I just didn't want to just sit around and do nothing. Well, so I was working at a bank prior to coming into real estate. And part of what made me decide to come into real estate was the job that I had. I oversaw the research and adjustments department at a bank. And my boss one day came to me and said, hey, I have a project for you. And I said, okay, what is it? And when he explained the project to me, it had nothing to do with my department that I oversaw and had everything to do with the neighboring department. And actually the lady that had trained me. And so I asked this boss of mine, I said, so why did you give this project to me versus giving it to this other lady? Because it really has to do with her department. And he said, well, because I know you'll get it done, and I'm not sure that she will. And I remember I went home that day and I was like very like confused, because at that bank, the way it almost didn't matter how good of an employee you were. The amount of money you got paid was based on the position that you had and how long you had been at the bank. So it was somewhat of like, if you're at this position, you always start here, and then the longer you're in that position, the more money you'll make, and you can go get a new position that would get you hired. But she had been in the position a lot longer than me, so she made a lot more money than I did. Yet he was asking me to do her job for her. And that was kind of the final straw for me, that when I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go get paid according to what I do. And so I came into real estate. So with that kind of as the background, I show up to real estate, and my first day in the office, I go to my broker and I said, what should I do? And he said, first thing is go make a list of every person that you know. And I said, okay. So I went, sat down at my desk, and I remember that I went home that night and I got like, my wife had a book that had all of our relatives and kind of our wedding guest list kind of a thing. And I started writing down all the people. So I go back to the office the next day and I go to my broker and I said, all right, I did that. Now what? Now write a letter introducing, or not introducing because they all do me, but telling these people that you have gotten your real estate license, you're now in real estate. So I went and did that. I came back, okay, now what? Okay, mail out that to them. So I mailed it out. Now what? And I think my boss or my broker got sick of me coming and doing that, because he finally just said to me, look, if you will go knock on doors for 2 hours every day for the next 2 years, you'll be fine. And so I said, okay. So I went and was sitting in a training class similar to this about that same time. And I met a lady by the name of Shirley, which actually, ironically, driving in this morning, I was thinking about Shirley. And one of the goals, so this is a total side note for a second, but she and I met in a training class just like this. And as part of the class, we were supposed to be writing down like what we wanted to get out of real estate. And this is what I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know why. But I remember she had written down, her husband is Samoan, and she had written down that she wanted to buy some land and build a house in Samoa. And so she had written it down, and for years, she and I would go prospect and we would talk, and she would always talk about doing this. Well, for whatever reason this morning, I realized like she did it. And it's been a few years ago. So that's why I don't know why I was thinking about it today. But driving into the office today, I was thinking like Shirley actually built a house in Samoa. And then here's the weird thing. She called me today, which I haven't talked to her in years. And she called me today to ask me a question. I was like, Shirley, I was thinking about you. So now here I'm talking about her too. But here's the thing. So I met Shirley, and she and I became somewhat of friends. And I remember telling her, well, hey, our broker, his name was Tom. Tom said we should go out and knock on doors 2 hours a day. Do you want to go knock on doors? And she said, yeah. So she and I would jump in the car, and let me give you kind of the process. So we would meet at the office typically around 9 o'clock. And then we would go into a conference room, and she and I would role play for a little while of like, okay, what would you say if this happened? How would you respond to this or whatever? And we would usually do it based on what had happened the day before. But at about 9:45, we would go jump in either her car or mine, and we would drive. We had a neighborhood out in Kearns that we loved to door knock. And back then, the houses in that neighborhood would all sell for about $80,000. And we loved that neighborhood because even today, I mean, the equivalent today would be if you went and listed the house for $250, like what's going to happen with it? Yeah, it's going to go like that. Well, that's how these were out in Kearns, is they were about $80,000. And so we would go door knock these houses because we just knew, man, if you list one, they were going to sell like that. So we'd go door knock, and we would do that until we got to about 25 contacts. Was kind of our goal every day. And we would catch probably more people at home than, well, today you catch a lot of people at home, but before COVID kind of a thing. You would catch a lot more people at home back 20 something years ago. But so we would go door knock till we would get about 25 contacts. Then we'd go back to the office. We'd kind of go our separate ways. Well, Shirley and I decided, well, now what do we do? So because he had said, go door knock for 2 hours. So we would do that from 10 until about noon. Well, then now what do we do? And so we had this idea, well, I mean, I guess if 2 hours is good and we don't have anything going on, we should do 2 more hours. So she and I would leave, go do lunch. We would meet back at the office, usually at 1:30, something like that. We would jump back on the phone, and then we would call for 2 hours every day. Well, I had been doing that for about 1.5 years. Now, one of the other things that my manager had told me was he had this formula that he would use, and I think it's an okay place to start, but there's some flaws in this formula. But here's basically what he said, is if you will talk to 100 people, you'll get 10 contacts, and that'll turn into 1 transaction. So I was like, okay. So Shirley and I, we created then this goal of we wanted to get 50 contacts every day. So we would go make 50 contacts a day. And the other thing that he had done is he gave me this formula that basically said, if you make 50 contacts a day, and then back then our average commission we would get was about $2,000. We would make $2,000 per, excuse me, I left a piece out. If we did 50 contacts a day, essentially he said, however many contacts a day you do will turn into how many transactions a year that you will do. And there is still some truth to that, but there's also, you got to improve some skill, which we'll talk about. But so I wanted to make $100,000 a year. So if I was going to make $2,000 per closing, I needed to do 50 closings a year to make $100,000 a year. So that's kind of how we came up with that. Well, so Shirley and I would go try to door knock till we got 25 contacts. We would then in the afternoon get on the phone and make 50 contacts, 25 contacts, hoping to get to our 50 for the day. It's kind of what we would end up doing. Well, I had been doing that about 1.5 years. Well, here's the problem, is according to his philosophy, if you talk to 50 people a day, you should do that many closings a year. Well, 1.5 years into it, I had not made the $100,000 that I was supposed to make. Instead, I had made about $35,000. But yet I was making 50 contacts every single day. Well, about 1.5 years into it, so I mentioned to you guys the guy that trained me on and told me, have how many chairs set up for people that are coming and have them close together and blah, blah, blah. Well, I met that guy in the end of 1997. And we were in a class and he started to talk about this, what we're talking about right here. And I had brought up that I was frustrated because I came into real estate. So essentially, let me tell you what I'm saying. When I quit the bank, I was making about $35,000 a year. And so I've now been gone from the bank and I'm 1.5 years in the business making about $35,000 a year. Well, like that wasn't what I came into this business to do. And I was frustrated. So I'm in this training and we're talking and I bring this up to this guy and I tell him that like, hey, supposedly you talk to 100 people, you're going to get 10 leads turned into a transaction. Well, I'm doing 50 people a day, which should translate into 50 transactions, which should equate to 100,000, which I'm not doing. And that's when he then started to draw this on the board. And what he told me was this. So now here's the key piece. Is I had gotten out of this activity space, which so for you guys, if you're still in this activity space, get out of it as fast as you can and get into the contact space. The process is to get out of that and into this contact space as quick as you can, which for Rebecca is basically what happened last week was we got her out of the activity space into the contact space. And it's scary, right? I mean, that first phone call is always really scary because what if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer or whatever? So we got her into here. Well, so here's the problem is 1.5 years later, I was still in this phase. Now, if this green line here is how much money you're making, you can see what the problem was. When you're in the contact phase, here's what happens is your focus is on making contacts. And so part of what we're talking about right now is focus. So one of the first key principles that we're going to talk about today is focus. And your focus it's okay early on to say, okay, I got to learn how to do some of this stuff. But then quickly you got to get into this contact phase. And during the contact phase, my focus and yours, if you're in the contact phase, is on what? What's your focus on? Well, during, say it again, Tim.
Money.
Well, sort of, yes. But your focus is on making contacts. Because remember, what was my goal every day? 50 contacts every day. So here's what would happen. During the contacts phase where I was in, what would happen is I would go to work, and I already told you, Shirley and I would go out door knock. We would try to get 25 contacts. If we were short of that at the 2-hour mark, we would go back to the office, go to lunch. We would start calling again in the afternoon, and we would just continue to call until we hit 50. Well, I had been doing that essentially for a year and a half, and I was not making the kind of money that everybody said I should make. Well, as I brought it up to this guy, what he told me is, he said, here's the problem. Your focus is on making contacts. And during the contacts phase, that's okay. But when your focus is on making contacts, what you make is contacts. So said another way, here's what was happening for me. Every day I would go to work, and I had a little, I usually use a business card, and on the back of it, I would put little tick marks every time I talked to somebody. And then my goal was to hit 50. And as soon as I hit 50, I would go home and I would feel like I worked really hard today. And I felt really good about myself because I made my goal of making 50 contacts. See, my focus was on making contacts. So guess what I got? Contacts. And what, as this guy started to explain this to me, and so this is why I'm explaining it to you, is I want you to be in this phase for a short time where that is what your focus is on, is I got to make X number of contacts. And then go make that number of contacts is great. But I want you to get out of this phase as quick as you can. Go ahead.
So crossover to some of your other lectures, when you say X amount of contacts, your philosophy is 200 contacts, right?
No.
Or is that just your SOI?
Yeah, that's just the SOI. So
we're talking new contacts, how many?
So how many contacts should you make? Is that what you're asking?
While we're in that phase, yes, it's a finite time, but so that I have a projection.
So yes, I got you. Perfect. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but yes, I know exactly what you're saying. So I would say for when you're in this phase, it should be 30 a day. 30 contacts a day.
For a month or?
Not longer than a month.
Not long enough. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so to me, that's where I would say, and that's where you should be saying, okay, is I need to be making 30 contacts a day, is just to start to get going on making contacts. Now, but remember, you're an independent contractor, and these are only suggestions. All right, now, but here's what happened with this guy. What this guy said to me is, he said, okay, so how many hours a day are you prospecting? And I said 4 to 5 a day. So it would take me 4 to 5 hours a day to get to 50 contacts. And he said, okay, so you're prospecting 4 to 5 hours a day, and you're making basically $35,000 a year. And he said, what if I told you that you could prospect half as much, but double your income? I was like, sign me up. Like, I've been doing it for a year and a half. And have any of you, and will you guys that are on Zoom too, have any of you made 50 contacts in a day? Talk to 50 people? Anybody online? Any Zoom people? Yes, no? Are you still alive? Are you asleep? All right, I'm seeing not yet, no, no. Okay, yeah, here's what I will tell you. To make 50 contacts in a day it takes a lot of time, and you're tired at the end of it. Slide. Time out. All right. So it's work to get, like, when you do it, you're like, once you hit 50, you're like grateful to be done with 50, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. Now, I know a few agents who have set the goal of, hey, I want to make 100 in a day, and I've never done that. But one agent I was talking to about it, and here's the point of this whole focus, was he said, I had set the goal one day of I'm going to make 100 contacts in a day. And it took him the entire day, and I don't remember if it was 8, 9, or 10 hours, but it took the entire day to get to 100 contacts. Guess how many appointments he's had? 0. See, when your focus is on making contacts, what you get is contacts, which is okay in the beginning. But what I want you to do is to get out of that and get into what I'm writing up here next, which is the appointment space. The next phase of this is the appointment space. Now you'll notice, look how steep the learning curve is on that. See, back here in the activities phase, it's nice and easy. Like it's just a smooth flowing river. And as you get into contacts, then it starts to get a little bit of a ramp up. But then look at what happens in the appointment space. And so what this guy did is what he said to me is he said, okay, Russ, what if you could prospect half as much but double your income? Well, for me, I was like, okay, so instead of 4 to 5 hours of prospecting, what you're telling me is that I could do 2 to 2.5 hours of prospecting and double my income. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And he said, okay, here's what you need to do then. In order for that to happen, quit focusing on contacts and instead your focus is on getting an appointment. See, and what he had me change was every day I was showing up with my objective today is I got to get 50 contacts. And then I would go get 50 contacts and like I said, I'd go home, I'd feel good about myself, but I wasn't really making any money. And what he said is instead of that, change your focus from being on contacts to I'm going to prospect today until I get an appointment. And I said, okay. And so he challenged me. So now this training that I was in with him that day was a Monday, Tuesday, then the next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and then 2 weeks later was a Friday. So, and the reason he structured it that way is because he actually, this friend of mine actually now lives in Park City, but when I met him and he came and did this training, he lived in La Jolla, California. So he would fly here for 2 days to train us, then he'd be gone for a week, come back 2 days, and then was gone 2 weeks and come back and we'd do the 5th day of training. Well, this was on day 2 of the training that he introduced this. And he said, will you commit to between today and next Wednesday? So in fact, today's Tuesday, it was a Tuesday. He said, will you commit between today and next Wednesday when we would meet again in class that you will set an appointment every single day, regardless of how many contacts it takes you? And I said, yeah, I could do that. And he said, okay. Now what that means though, is you cannot go home until you set an appointment tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And he said, he could tell that I obviously wasn't getting what he meant because he said, no, like for real, like Aaron, you can't go home tomorrow if you don't get an appointment. And I was like, no, I get it. And he said, let me just make sure you really understand what I'm saying. Go home tonight and tell your wife, I am not coming home tomorrow if I don't set an appointment. And I was like, oh, you mean like I really can't go home? And he was like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you is if you do not get an appointment, you don't go home. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to commit to doing that. And he said, it's for 1 week. Like, you could do it. So he kind of convinced me to do it. I finally said, okay, I'll do it. So between that, now let me pause in the story, actually. Let me ask you a question. Now that you understand this, and this goes for you guys on Zoom as well. Is there? Oh, okay. So let me ask you a question. If you were in this phase and you had been me, so put yourself into my position for a minute. So you've been making 50 contacts a day, and now all of a sudden you're told tomorrow you cannot go home until you set an appointment. Now let me tell you kind of what it looked like for me. I would get, well, so let's look at it. You guys already kind of know. If it was $2,000 a deal and I made $35,000, how many deals had I done in a year, approximately? Yeah, approximately 17 deals that year is what I had done. Now, if you were going to do 17 deals in a year, how many appointments do you think I was setting per, let's just even say week or a month maybe, to get to 17? If I was doing 17 transactions, which is basically a little over 1 a month, how many appointments do you think I was setting, let's just say per week? And I don't know the answer. I don't really remember, but I could ballpark it.
Probably 120 a year.
like that statistic you put up there, yeah, 100%. That's right.
Yeah, but that's not what happened. I'll tell you. It's not even close. That's, and you'll see in one of the other classes, I have some disagreement with this whole thing. I don't believe it's true because I lived it and I've watched a number of agents live it too. Like, it sounds good in theory, but I don't think it's really real. So here's what I will tell you. I was probably getting maybe 2 appointments a week. So I guess maybe 100 appointments in the month, in a year to do that. But honestly, that's probably even, as I think back on it, that's probably high. I probably wasn't really getting that many. So now let me ask you this. So now keep in mind, I've now committed, I'm not going home tomorrow if I don't set an appointment. But in actuality, prior to that, I'd been doing 50 contacts per day and probably setting 2 appointments maybe per week. Now, put yourself in that position. So you're me, okay? And I say to you, you cannot go home tomorrow until you set an appointment. Recognizing that you're typically probably doing, what, 250 out of 250 contacts in a week, I would probably get 2 appointments. Which means if you followed the math of that, which I don't necessarily believe in, but let's follow the math of it, that would say that tomorrow I probably have to do, in order to get an appointment, I probably have to do like 100 or 125 contacts. Okay, so you're me. You can't go home tomorrow until you set an appointment. What are you going to do differently tomorrow than you did today?
Get an appointment, just by phone calls.
Okay, so how, I love the idea of that, but how am I going to do it? What are you going to do differently?
Ask people for appointments, not for contacts.
Close it when you get them on the phone.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I wish I was as smart as you guys, because that was not necessarily what my thought was. But yeah, that's exactly right. Is we got to change our focus. You're exactly right. I got to change my focus from contacts to appointments. Now let me show you what that looked like. Here's what it looked like before when I would go out prospecting. So assuming I was knocking on Aaron's door, so I'd knock. Aaron would answer the door, and I would say, "Hi, my name is Russ. I'm with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's home over here, and it's got blah, 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 and it's got this blah, blah, blah. Who do you know that wants to move into the area?" So role play it with me.
I don't really know anyone.
You don't know anyone? Okay, well, how about you? When do you plan on moving?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
Okay, well, do you know anybody else thinking about it around here?
Not right now, no.
Okay, well, here's my card. If you hear of anybody thinking of buying or selling, let me know. Now, is that a contact? Absolutely it is. So because it's a contact, when you're in this phase, you go, yes, 1. I only got to get 49 more and I can go home for the day. See, now though, based on what you guys said, I've got to change my focus. Now let me show you what it looks like different. Well, let me back up actually and ask you this. If I said that for you for tomorrow, you can't go home until you get an appointment, what time are you going to show up to work?
7.
Yeah, so now remember, during this contacts phase, I was showing up to the office at 9-ish. All of a sudden, so this on that Tuesday when he had me commit to it, that next morning, 7:30, Rebecca, is what time I showed up. I showed up at the office at 7:30. I was pulling the expireds. I was pulling the for sale by owners. I was getting phone numbers. I was pulling out all my leads. Like I was doing all of this stuff because I was like, okay, I got to go get an appointment and I got to get one because I can't go home until I do it. Well, so my friend Shirley that I told you about was not in this training. And so the other piece of it that he had made to me is once I set my appointment for the day, I could be done for the day too. I didn't have to prospect anymore during that week. And so I jump on the phone at 8 a.m. versus before I wouldn't start prospecting until 10. So it's now 8 o'clock in the morning. I've got the expireds pulled. I've got the for sale by owners. I've got all my leads there and I'm just on the phone. Well, by 9:30, I had set an appointment because Shirley and I would typically go role play at about 9:30. So it's time for me to go role play. So I go into the conference room with Shirley and we role play. And she says, all right, you ready to go door knocking? And I said, well, I've already set my appointment for the day, so I'm going home. And she was like, what? Don't, and Shirley was a great accountability partner because she would be like, no, you're not. You're coming with me door knocking. And I was like, just for this week, Shirley, I've got a prospect till I get an appointment. So even when we go door knocking, I'm gonna have to drive separately because if I set an appointment, I'm quitting and going back. She was like, you're gonna regret this, don't do it. But I did. Here's the interesting thing. Typically I was prospecting 4 to 5 hours a day, not getting very many appointments. All of a sudden now, during that week, I prospected 2 hours or less and set an appointment every single day that week. Now, what changed? That's right, is I changed from focusing on making contacts to appointments. Now, let me show you what that looks like. Because before, if I came and knocked on Aaron's door and he answered, as long as he talked to me and if this happened, knock, knock, opens the door, hi, I'm Russ with Century 21. We've got your neighbor's home listed, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'm not interested, slams the door. Is that a contact? Yeah, it is. For me, at least the way I counted it, as long as I could tell them who I was and what company I was with and what I was there for, if they slammed the door on me, that I still made a contact. Like, now, if he would have opened the door and just said, I'm not interested and slammed it, I didn't count that because I didn't even get a chance to tell them who I was or what I was doing. But for me, if I got to tell them who I was and what I was doing and they slammed the door, in my mind, under the contact phase, I was happy because I was like, there's one. Now, so let me show you what changed on this now, because now I don't care how many contacts I'm getting. Now let me pause for a minute. Still keep track of how many contacts you're doing. You still want to. And why? Why would I say you should still keep track of how many contacts you're doing?
So you know how many your average is to make an appointment.
Perfect. That's exactly what it is. And why is that important?
When my self-esteem, I don't know why.
Okay, good. Good. I like that. So the other reason you want to keep track is you need to see, are you getting better? See, the whole purpose for me now of keeping tracks of contacts is not about making a number of contacts. It's about figuring out how effective am I at converting those into an appointment. So it's about the skill level, and it's about if you start to notice a drop off in your percentage of contacts to appointments, it's a mental wake up for you of like, okay, what have I changed? What's not working? So part of what I'm saying to you too is when things are working really well for you, make sure you're recording yourself so that when things are not working well, you can go back and go, okay, what am I saying now versus what I was saying when it was working really well? Yeah.
Yeah, so to put it in perspective a little bit, when you change your focus from contacts to appointments, did you notice that you were getting appointments faster than Shirley was, who was just focused on the contacts when you went door knocking?
Great question. So, and the answer is initially yes. In the long run, though, here's what's interesting is because Shirley never went through the training. I don't think she ever went through the training ever, even though it had opportunities later on. But here's what's interesting is just almost Shirley and I would compete against each other kind of. So in the office we were in, there was a board similar to this that would track like everybody's production on it. And for me and for Shirley, it was always like we wanted to, it was this friendly competition. And so it's fascinating though, as my production rose, then hers would rise as well. So initially, yes, but because of what was happening, I think just she kind of started to do it as well. So it's a great question. All right. Now, so let me show you what changed. So before, as long as I talked to him, I was like happy and I would go to the next door. Now, keep in mind though, if I get an appointment from him, I can be done for the day was what my mentality was. I don't have to keep doing it. So here's what happened. So let me show you how it changed. So now I knock on the door. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's home over here, the Johnsons. It's got 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, listed for $499,900. Wondering who you know that wants to move into the area.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know anyone.
You don't know anyone? Okay, well, hey, I appreciate you thinking about it. How about you? When do you plan on moving?
I don't, unless something out of the blue happens, I don't plan on moving.
So no plans.
No.
All right, cool. So how long have you lived here?
Oh, we're going on 10 years now.
Oh, 10 years, really? Wow, that's great. Where did you move from?
We came from Arizona.
Oh, really? What part?
Down in Tucson.
In Tucson, up to
Yeah.
here. Okay, cool. So what brought you up here?
Job.
Oh, job. So what do you do for work then? Make it up.
Let's see.
You're a garbage man. That's great.
Yeah, there you
So,
go.
wow, that's awesome.
Came up here
Fantastic.
to
How long,
garbage man.
yeah, how long you been doing that? 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, hey, so if you ever were to move, where would you go next?
Ever since we've been here, we've loved the area. I more than likely just stay in Utah.
So more than likely you would just stick here. Okay,
Yeah.
but just a different neighborhood or?
We've been here for a while. We've kind of gotten comfortable with it. We'd stick around this area. We might go to a neighboring city, but
Okay, just somewhere closer by. So,
Yeah.
but if you could change something about your home, what would it be?
it'd be nice to have a little bit of a bigger yard, but we're not too concerned about it.
So not too worried about it. Okay. So when do you think that would be that you would end up looking at a new place?
I don't know. Maybe a little bit later, as I got maybe closer to retirement or something, we might look at moving.
So closer to retirement.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, I'm going to pause for a minute. Through the questions I'm asking, what did we learn?
Where he came from.
Okay, good. What else, Tim? Okay, good. I'm building rapport. Good.
He was a garbage man for 10 years.
Okay, but what am I learning about him in real estate?
Oh, sorry.
That he has what? That he has a small yard. Okay, good. But here's what I'm looking for. How much motivation does he have to buy a new place?
Hardly any.
Yeah, so really hardly any. So what that's telling me is probably not a whole lot going on with him in terms of real estate. Now, I'm going to introduce another piece to you here in just a minute. But before I do, I want to finish this off. So because I'm noticing that, see, part of the reason I'm asking all these questions, and I love what you said, Ryan, because the early questions I was asking, as far as like, well, where did you move from? And how did you happen to pick this area? Well, actually, I don't know if I did say how did you happen to pick it. Did I ask you? Oh, okay. But I'm asking those type of questions and following, oh, so what do you do for work? And how long have you done that? Oh, that's great. All of those things are about the rapport. That's all about rapport. And the purpose of the rapport questions to build the rapport is so that when I say, well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? If I have built rapport with him, he'll tell me the truth. If I have not built rapport, he'll go, we don't play. See, so the purpose of then all of those questions is to lead me up to asking, well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? And when he was like, I don't really know, we haven't thought about it. See, I felt like we had some rapport, and the fact that he's saying that is probably true. But then I asked the follow-up question, well, if you could change something about your home, what would you change? So it was just another avenue of me trying to figure out, is there anything going on that he's like thinking, oh, well, we would want to change this or that. And when he said, well, maybe a bigger yard, but we're actually fine with what it is. Like that took away more. All he's telling me is there's not a whole lot of motivation. Make sense? So now let me show you what I would do. So one of two things I'm going to do. In that scenario, I'm either going to cut off the conversation and just go to the next phone call or the next door, or, but for me, especially once he just said, because when did he say he would move, would probably make that move? Retirement. So now watch this. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into the role play. Okay, so you just said,
Closer to retirement is when we.
okay, so closer to retirement. Oh, perfect. Hey, well, that brings up a great point. How are you using real estate to plan for your financial future?
At this point, I'm not.
Yeah, that's usually the answer. So if there was a way that you could buy an investment property that would allow you to get some additional income that would help you towards retirement, would that interest you?
We don't have a lot of free money on hand right now, so I mean,
Okay.
if it was cheap and didn't cost me a lot, I mean maybe, but it's just something I haven't thought about.
So if there was a way that you could do it without having to put a whole lot of money down, it would be interesting.
I might think about it, but at this point I haven't thought about it.
Okay. Well, so one of the things that I specialize in doing is helping people get that going. So what we ought to do really as a next step is we ought to sit down and spend 20, 30 minutes just so that I can walk you through the process, explain to you what that would look like. And then from there, we can see if it would be something you're interested in. So what works better, afternoons or evenings?
Evenings.
So evenings. Okay. So would 4 or 5 be better?
5 is fine.
5. Okay. So would tomorrow at 5 work for you then? Sure. Great. So now notice, I just had what initially the first contact was a contact and I moved on, and now I just set an appointment. Now, what questions do you have based on that, if any? And I'm anticipating there's at least one, but if not, then I'll answer it for you anyway.
Yeah, what would you bring to the table? Maybe what property?
Okay, good. So here's what that's along the lines of where I was thinking. So, because sometimes what people will say is, well, yeah, but that doesn't sound like somebody you really would want to go get an appointment and sit down with him on an appointment. And so here's the thing to keep in mind. For me, now, over time, this has changed a little bit for me. And what I mean by that is, like, I've gotten to the point where I could probably get that type of an appointment on most doors that I would go knock on. Which, so to some extent, here's what I'm saying. And this was a learned thing for me, and I'll finish my story about this in a minute. But that may or may not be a great appointment that I would actually go and attend. So keep that in mind. I'm not necessarily going to attend that appointment. So, because here's the next step that I would have done. So watch what happens. So we're going to meet tomorrow at 5 o'clock to where we can talk more about it. So here's what I'm going to do, though, is, Aaron, before our appointment, I'm going to have my lender give you a call just to walk you through what the process would be on the lending side of things and tell you what options he's got available as far as down payment and those kinds of things. So when would be the best time to have them call you before 5 o'clock?
I mean, 4 o'clock would be fine.
Okay. So would it be possible to do it earlier in the day?
It'd have to be earlier in the morning.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get, and the only reason I say that, and 4 is fine if that's what it would have said, no, 4 is what's best, great. I am not going to probably go on the appointment. I'm going to have the lender call and talk to him first to find out, is his credit good enough? Does he have a way to come up with some money for a down? Those kinds of things first. But keep in mind, so here's how I even would say somewhat to think about it. The first thing we're trying to get from them is needs and wants. I'm trying to find out from them any needs or wants that they have. Once they do that, then the next step is I want to set the appointment with them. Once I have set the appointment, now I'm going to pre-qualify. Now, when I say pre-qualify, that doesn't necessarily mean just with a lender. That a lender is part of it, but part of pre-qualifying is me finding out, do I really want to go on that appointment? Now part of why I'm saying this to you guys as I'm explaining it is, early on for me, I was not as skilled, and I say that like not boasting or anything, but just the more time you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I wasn't as skilled at setting appointments. I wouldn't have probably been able to get an appointment in that scenario. So early on for me, if I had gotten that, I would have gone on the appointment. I would have counted it as an appointment, all those kinds of. Today for me, and remember, I'm talking to me personally. For you guys right now, and you guys that are on Zoom, most of you, if you could go and get that appointment, I would say take it and count it as an appointment, and you can, if you want, to be done for the day prospecting, be done for the day prospecting. For me personally, that's not the quality that I today would want to get. Now, I'm in a different position than where you are. And so actually, let me finish the story for you guys on this. What happened? That whole week, I went out and set an appointment every single day. Now, I continued, once I saw that I could do it every day, I started that was my mission every single day was I got to set an appointment. I don't care how many contacts it takes me, I've just got to set an appointment. And so I would go and prospect until I would set an appointment. And once I would set the appointment, then I would be done for the day, but I didn't care how many contacts that took me. Now, at the end of the year, I was prospecting half as much and I had doubled that income. In fact, I think I had a little bit more than doubled the income. Well, the next year, I continued to only set one new appointment every day, yet I doubled and I didn't prospect anymore, but I doubled my income the next year. And then the next year after that, I didn't quite double it, but I almost doubled it again the next year, only setting one appointment a day. Now, how did it keep doubling by only setting one new appointment a day? Well, the reason is I got to where if I could tell I could get an appointment that it was probably going to go nowhere. And how you'll learn that is just as you get seasoned in doing it, you'll figure out, look, that one is probably not going to be that great of an appointment, so I'm not even going to try, and I shouldn't say try. I probably wouldn't have set an appointment. I would have just said, hey, I'm gonna have my lender give you a call. And then if the lender called me back and said, yeah, I talked to him, he's great, he's got a good down payment, he's got the credit, he's excited about buying investment property, now I'm gonna go on the appointment. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Eric.
So you say you're gonna have your lender, but previously you had said that you need to have like an option 3. Is that?
No, I never said that.
I thought you said like when we're
That's for like, if you know anybody who can fix my porch or my.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was probably at the board that you heard that you need to give an option of 3. And there are times that I would agree that you probably should do
We're
something.
just like have who uses Spiro, for example.
Yeah.
Just having
Yep.
Spiro call him. And then
Today I have typically the people that I just can know and trust or whatever, and I just tell them and have my lender call you. And but now here's the good news with that, especially using the Inspiro part, is we have an affiliated business disclosure, a form that they have to sign before we do a transaction that actually even says you should check around and compare. So that's why I don't worry about it right then, is because before they're going to do anything, we have them sign that affiliated business disclosure where we're telling them you should go and check it around. There may be somebody else.
And Spiro takes care of that.
No, you will. Yeah, it's just part of the buyer packet and the seller packet. So yeah, great question. So what happened then with me is what changed in that is I just got better at figuring out when it was a good appointment or not. And let me give you one other quick example and then we'll move on. And that was this. Early on in the process, why I would say that like, I mean, it was more than double the first year after this, but if I started to get desperate, I would call, I probably shouldn't tell you this because then you might use it, but I'll tell you, and then I'll tell you also that I figured out it was cheating. I was cheating myself, not like this, nothing illegal, but I was cheating myself by doing this. Is I figured out I could call a for sale by owner and say, hey, can I come out and take a look at your house as I might have a buyer for it. And they would go, yeah, you can come out and look at my house. And I go, yes, I got an appointment. Now I can quit for the day. And what I learned though during that first year is like, I was only cheating myself. And so for me, what happened is the next couple of years, I just got more, what's the word? Picky, whatever, what I would count as an appointment, which is what then led me to making more money by only prospecting still the same amount of time. Does that make sense? Okay. So any questions on any of that or other things? All right. So, let me say one other thing. So your first objective is figuring out people's needs and wants. So when you're on a call with somebody, that's what we're trying to get is what are their needs and wants. Once I get that, now I can go for an appointment. Then after that is when I want to pre-qualify. And pre-qualify, again, is not necessarily just with Inspiro. Inspiro would be part of it, getting in with the lender. But for me, pre-qualifying is figuring out, is there motivation? Is there something that really is going to work, is what I mean by pre-qualifying, is figuring out, hey, so if you had the money and you could buy one, would you want to go and buy a property? Yeah, no, we want to do that. Like if the way he responded when I said that was like, well, I mean, yeah, maybe. Like to me, I'm kind of like, all right, there's not a ton of motivation. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, good. So now, under this appointments phase, notice this is the steepest part of this curve, meaning this is the hardest part of the job, is doing it. And so what we are going to talk about for the rest of the day today and even on Thursday as we continue this is how do we do that? How do we make this take place? How do we get better at it so that we can set more appointments, okay? Now, let me just quickly here, not that this matters. The last piece of this is what I always call the transaction phase. Now, on this, so ultimately, this transactions phase is where basically you're holding yourself to, I've got to do a certain number of transactions per month kind of a thing. So this appointments one is I don't go home until I get an appointment. This transactions one is more about making so many transactions happen. Now, the way that works, the way you get to that is the next phase of this, which actually, if I were to continue drawing this on, this next transaction phase is going to take you even up to the next level. And I'll tell you, for me personally, I got to the point where I just became complacent with this appointments phase and the income I was getting from it, to where I didn't focus to go to the next one. But I'll tell you what it would have looked like, because some of you may want to do this. For me, the next level of this, so when I'm saying the next level, when we're talking set 1 new appointment a day, in today's world, that's probably going to give you an income of $300,000, $400,000 a year. If you're wanting to go to the $700,000, $1 million a year, the way you do that is you keep 1 appointment every day. See, now, so let me make sure you understand what I said. What I did was set 1 new appointment a day. See, I set an appointment with Aaron. I didn't necessarily keep that. And remember, I might have even been the one to cancel the appointment. Even though I set it for 5 o'clock tomorrow, if the lender called him and couldn't get a hold of him, or the lender called and says his credit's horrible, or there's just no way it's going to happen, I'm not going on that appointment. But I still set it. I just didn't keep it. So the next level of this is you keep an appointment every single day, which if you were going to keep an appointment every day, you're going to have to set how many per day? Probably 2 or 3. Yeah, you're typically, because typically what's going to happen is you set, of all the appointments you set, probably 50% of those appointments will be kept early on, is what's going to happen. Is typically, I'll set an appointment with Aaron, and then either he'll flake out on me, he only agreed to get me off of his doorstep or off the phone, whatever. So you're going to have about half of them fall through. So if that's the case, I need to be setting 2 or 3 appointments per day if I want to keep an appointment every day. Does that make sense? Okay. That's how you go to that next level. So that's what that looks like. All right. Let's see. Next thing that I wanted to show you guys. Let me see. Let me check my notes here, see if I missed anything. I got 2 different directions we could go here. All right. Here's what we're going to do. All right. Let me just check notes, make sure there is a question. What would you say to him if he asked if you can sit with him now? Oh, great question. So that's an excellent question. So what she's asking is, when I had talked to Aaron and said, hey, could we tomorrow get together or whatever? And how would I respond if he said, well, can't we do it right now? That's a great question. Here's how I always respond to that. Is I always tell them, because remember I said, we just listed your neighbor's home over here, and I said, I don't remember what I said their name was, the Jones or whatever. If they said to me, well, can we just sit down and talk about it right now? I mean, you can decide what you want to do with it from there. But for me, I always said it as, you know what? I've got to finish. I'm out working right now for the Jones, trying to find a buyer for their house. So unfortunately, I can't sit down right now because I'm out working for them. But if you wanted to get together, you know, later today or whatever, is how I would respond. So especially for the ladies, if you're out door knocking, I always recommend if you knocked on somebody's door and they're like, oh yeah, come in and let's talk. Like for the women, maybe I should recommend it for the guys too, I don't know. But I think Ryan can take care of himself, so you can go into their house. But for the women, I'm like, I recommend don't just go into somebody's house. Even if it's, hey, I'll come back in an hour or something, but just do it as a, hey, I'm busy right now finishing this, so I can't do it right now, but I could come back after I finish or tomorrow or whatever, and then you.
Maybe a good time to say, let me get my lender to call you and get this stuff the way we need to.
Yep, that would work as well. Yeah, that would work as well as saying, hey, let me get the lender on. I'm going to go finish door knocking while they talk to you. And blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, perfect. So good. Let's see. That answer your question? And let's see, I don't see any others. So I think we're good. Okay, so next phase of this then. Let me erase this. And I want to get into the next piece of this. So the next piece of this, so we talked about, the first thing we talked about here is focus, which I probably shouldn't have erased that. So the first thing is we've got to have the right focus, which the focus has got to be on setting appointments, not on making contact, right? So the next piece of this after the focus is we want to get those needs and wants. Now, part of getting the needs and wants is also about building rapport. So I'm going to just put on here the next piece of this in terms of us generating leads is you've got to build rapport with people. And the way that you're going to do that in terms of building rapport is through asking questions. So we're going to need to ask questions. Now, on the questions, when you ask the question, think of it this way. A lot of times people will say, I don't like scripts, or I don't want to use a script or whatever, and I hate it sounding like a scripted salesperson or whatever. So let me ask you guys, in the conversation that I had with Aaron where I knocked on his door, did it sound like I was using a script? Because I was. Now, so why did it not sound like I was using a script?
You made it your own.
Okay, and so how? You're right, but how did I do that?
Well, obviously, practice and then not making it sound robotic.
Good. And yes, that's exactly right. There's a couple things that I want to hit on with this. And there was a study done at UCLA on communication. And what they found is 7% of communication is the words that we use. 38% of communication is the tone that we use. And 55% of communication is the body language. So I'm just going to put as BL, but body language. Okay. Now, most of the time, the reason we have an issue with scripts is because we are using it as the 7% of communication, is just we're using the words. But you have to know the words in order to then know how to use them. Until you know them, you don't know how to use the words. But I'm going to put this on hold for a second and come back here to this. The reason that it didn't sound like I'm using a script is because I'm using some repeating and affirming. But when I repeat and affirm, I'm bringing in the tone to it. Let me show you what I mean. So I say to Aaron, where did you move from?
We came from Arizona.
Oh, from Arizona to here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
See, that's when you do the repeat and affirm and adds, let me do it differently without any tone. And I mean, there's still tone. But. So where did you move from?
We came up from Arizona.
Oh, from Arizona to here. That's great. Does that feel very sincere?
Yeah.
Which I promise you, most of you, and not just you guys, but you guys on Zoom as well, most people, that's what they sound like when they're prospecting, is they sound like this. So where did you move from?
Came up from Arizona.
From Arizona to here. Oh, that's great. So how did you choose this area?
Actually, we have a friend who used to live up here, and he recommended this area.
Okay. Now watch what happens if I don't repeat and affirm. So where did you move from?
I came up from Arizona.
And what brought you here?
We just had a friend down there who kind of knows the area, and he recommended this place.
So how did you choose this house?
We just kind of looked around in this area, and
Where were you on Friday night at 7 p.m.? Like, isn't that what it feels like? It's like it turns into an interrogation if I'm not repeating and affirming. But if I repeat and affirm to him and say, so from Arizona up to here, really, that's great. So what brought you up here?
Job.
Oh, job, really? Oh, so what do you do for work?
Garbage man.
Oh, you're a garbage man. Good for you. That's exciting. But now notice, though, what I'm doing is I'm actually, and I hate to say it this way, but it leads us into the next thing. I'm like pretending like I care. I mean, do I really care that he's like a garbage man and be, oh, you're a garbage man. Oh, that's awesome. Good for you. I don't really care. But notice that I'm letting him feel like that I do. The number one need that we all have is acceptance. And people want to be told and feel like they're right. Okay, so you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not, because it's like all of us. I mean, really, like you said, we don't really care, but like by you repeating and affirming, it shows that you're listening, and that's what's important.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's exactly right. It just shows that I'm listening to what they're saying, but which that is the repeat part, but the affirming part is what's going to make them feel good and want to continue to talk to you, is by me saying, so how long have you lived at this address?
About 10 years now.
10 years. Now, notice, and I don't know that you guys on Zoom could see it as well, so maybe I'll get to the screen here. Maybe you can see my face a little better on this one. But that I'm going to do this. So, so how long have you lived at this address?
About 10 years now.
10 years, really? That's great. So notice I like lift my eyebrows up and I'm like, wow, 10 years? Really? That's great. Like if you get excited about it here's what's amazing, and he's not doing it, but typically what I have found if I'm knocking on somebody's door and I said, so how long have you lived here?
10 years.
And if I do this, 10 years? Really? That's awesome. They usually will smile. Like, it's almost like, hey, I like this person because they're making me feel good about me. So keep in mind, that's what we're trying to do. Now, that leads us into this a side note for a second here. What is the difference between manipulation and persuasion? Say that again, Aaron. Yeah, that's right. Say more about that. What do you mean by it's your intent?
You're intending to persuade someone to help them, that's one thing, but if you're intending to manipulate them to make a decision that's not beneficial to them, usually manipulation is not beneficial to them.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So keep in mind that the skills that we are going to be using are a lot of the skills that I don't know what word to use, con man, somebody that is going to manipulate you would use the same skills. We want to use those same skills, but we're not using them to manipulate. We're using them to persuade. And I like the way Aaron said that, is to persuade them to do what's best for them. So that's the key, is I'm not, if for Aaron, buying an investment property is not the right thing for him, I am not going to get him into it. That's part of where I guess I'm coming from. But keep in mind that part of what's going to allow us to build the rapport is we got to use some of those same skills that a fraudster might use to manipulate somebody. But the difference between that and what we're going to do is our intention has got to be what? Yeah, and pure in what way? What do you mean?
That you're just, well, like we're saying, every day we'll not participate in any interaction or transaction that doesn't benefit all parties.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't think of that. But yeah, every single day we quote this Napoleon Hill self-confidence formula where he says, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting myself to the forces I wish to use in the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing a love for all humanity because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and myself. Yeah, that's exactly right. I love that. I never made that exact connection. I'm going to start using that all the time. And I'll give you credit twice. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing. I'm not going to give you credit at all. But yeah, other than right now. Yeah. 0 times 2. Yeah. So, but that's exactly right. So keep in mind, like part of why in the needs analysis that we'll do in the next few weeks, in that class, there's a piece that I will teach you on where what I call positive feedback. And one time in a class, I was sitting there doing it, and one of the other agents said to me, like, you acted like you were really concerned, but you actually didn't really care what they were even saying, did you? And I was like, no, I really don't. But they need to feel like I care. And again, I'm not doing it, and you guys will hear me tell stories over and over and over again of like, I will totally give up a commission. I'm going to fight for my commission, like, don't get me wrong. But if at the end of the day, it's going to be better for them, I'll step away from that in order to help them get what they want, because I know in the end, it'll come back to me. So even though what I'm saying now is like, we got to be really good at using some of these skills of having them feel like we really care and we're there to help. And we are, even though, am I really that excited that, how long have you lived here?
10 years.
10 years. Wow, that's great. Like, am I really that excited about it? No. But I want him to feel like I am, because I have got to build the rapport with him in order for me to get to him to tell me his needs and wants so that I can set an appointment. Are you guys thinking horrible of me, or you understand where I'm coming from? Okay. Because like seriously, like this is not about taking advantage of somebody, but it's about helping them. And let me just give you one other quick example that I've talked about a few times now, but 2 weeks ago, it may have been 3 now, but somewhere in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I did the virtual call around where I had got on Zoom, had one person up here in the room, but the intent was people to be on making calls. And in fact, I think some of the people on here may have been on that call. So when I finally was like, fine, I'll make a call since nobody else is making calls. And
This is the one about in Downpool that was overpriced in Downpool. She didn't want to list with one of our agents, talked to her for like 30 minutes.
yeah, no, this was the next call around. Were you on the next one that I did? Okay. Because the next one after that, I couldn't get anybody to make a phone call. So I finally just said, okay, I'm going to make a call. So I called on an old lead that I had, and I just said, I got the lady on the phone, and it was the classic, no, we're not really interested. And I did all this stuff. Oh, that's okay. I work with my clients at their pace. That's part of the other thing that we want to do to help disarm people. Because think about how you respond when a salesperson calls you. You're like, yeah, I want off the phone as fast as I can get off the phone. So for me, one of the best defenses against that when they are guarded is I just say, hey, Aaron, I work with my clients at their pace. So like, you don't have to worry about me trying to get you to do something you don't want to do. And that's true. Now, so I got on the phone with this lady, and she actually was looking in Woods Cross or Bountiful for a house. That's why when you first said that, I was like, yeah, you were on the call. But that I know which one you're talking about. That was different. But she said that we want to find a place to buy in Woods Cross or Bountiful, but we're not really sure, and we're only early on. We haven't even talked to a lender yet. And I was like, no worries. And in fact, her husband's mom is an agent in Chicago, and she said that they're going to talk to that lender. And I said, you know what, no worries. I'm going to have my lender, they'll give you a call, because sometimes an out-of-state lender, there ends up being issues, and let's just make sure we're getting you the best deal. So I'm going to have you call my lender. So they're now using my lender, by the way. I actually set an appointment after they got approved, went out and met them. I've shown them a few houses, and we wrote an offer, and we got under contract on Friday last week. So, but here's the point. On the phone call, she'd say like, no, we're not interested. We don't want to do anything yet. Here we are now. They're under contract. They're as excited as could be on it because of that. Does that make sense? So that's where I guess I'm coming from, is like, just keep in mind, people are going to be guarded at first. But as you build some rapport with them, and in fact, actually, I'm going to show you guys. I wasn't planning this, but I'm going to do it. Do we have? Yeah, we got it. I'm going to show you guys a quick video.
Russ, did you send out an email about that virtual call around thing?
Yeah, we did the whole company.
Well, did they end up in Woods Cross or Bountiful?
Bountiful. And for more money than they said, too. All right, I'm going to show you this video. Now, don't get too, hang on, got to do one other thing here. Uh-oh, what happened? All right, so for you guys on Zoom, I'm going to share it with you here in a second. Let me just get the screen down so you guys can see it. Now, here's what I want you to pay attention to. I want you to watch. There are some things I don't agree with that this guy does, but overall, he's pretty good at what he's doing. So I want you to watch this and pay attention. There's a couple of key things that I want you to notice that he says and does. So just really see what you pick up on from this. So you get it to where I can share it with you guys on Zoom as well. All right. Can you guys on Zoom, can you still see the screen? Somebody unmute.
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Here we go.
Like Nestle and beat it like Michael Jackson. That's why your neighbor said I remind him of Nicolas Cage because I'm gone in 60 seconds. But watch this right here, Dad. Look, who does this the most on the window? The kids, the dogs that are ugly black guys that eat fried chicken. Now you see these water spots? Look, like Nestle and beat it like Michael.
You guys didn't tell me I didn't turn on the thing here. I like turned around, nothing on. So I was so worried about you guys on Zoom, I didn't put it on the screen for the people in class. So this is 7 minutes long. We're not going to watch all 7 minutes. We're going to watch just the first little bit. But pay attention to how good this guy is at building rapport.
Michael Jackson. That's why your neighbor said I remind him of Nicolas Cage because I'm gone in 60 seconds. But watch this right here, Dad. Look, who does this the most on the window? The kids, the dogs that are ugly black guys that eat fried chicken. Now you see these water spots? Look, they get wider than my elbows without lotion. Watch this, Dad, and I'm out here. Because Stevie Wonder said seeing is believing. And I got a disease called enthusiasm, so I'm going to cut straight to the mustard. Watch this, though. Don't laugh too hard because the neighbor's going to see this black kid scrubbing your window, okay? But look, wax on like Mr. Miyagi. Remember the Karate Kid? Now watch this in air dry. Look, it puts a coating on your window. No water spots, no fingerprints, no streaks. That's why we can't sell it to criminals. Don't tell OJ or Tiger Woods, okay? High five. They've been loving this stuff. Now, Dad, you and Mom, y'all would agree. Oh my God. You see this right here? Who did that? Who did that? Okay, watch this. Now, my mom said if it's darker than me and it don't pay the bills, it shouldn't be there, right? God bless you. Now look, this right here, we just upgraded like Beyonce. This is our new surfactant. Hold this and watch this, because this should be the main reason why you get the HBO special. You know what HBO means? No. You get to help a brother out. I've been on the road like toilet paper. Half of your neighbors in the community, they say they just go get it because I'm funny, because this stuff spills itself. Look, you just go back and forth like an argument. Now, I ain't Jesus, but look how I split that like Moses did the Red Sea. Paint me green, call me a pickle. And look at this right here, look. Goes good with chicken. Don't drink it, though, it'll give you the Hershey squirts. But look, that one bottle lasts longer than my last relationship. Y'all got water, right? Yeah. High five, you qualify to use it. Oh yeah, Mom. Now, this is my last demo, and I'm out your hair quicker than your favorite shampoo. Y'all familiar with these right here, Sharpies? Yeah. Now watch this. Even though I'm black, it ain't black magic. It just worked. Because look, say you got this in the clothes or the carpets of the laundry. Would you agree that's hard to get out? Probably. Would you throw it out, shout it out, get OJ to stab it out, Mike Tyson to bite it out, Kobe Bryant to...
Oh, okay. You were done.
It was a multiple choice funny joke, because you know you can't put bleach on colors, right? Sure. Look at this. This safe on colors. That's why we couldn't sell it to Sammy Sosa. But look, you just spray the spray, right? Now, this right here takes out ink, blood, coffee stains, grass stains, Kool-Aid, lipstick, gum glue, candle wet. Would you say that's whiter than a Colgate Smile? Not. Oh my goodness, you see that? Should I use it on my teeth? It ain't Jesus in a bottle. I use mine, they turn brown. No, I'm just kidding. But no, you just use it on for your house. What's the hardest thing to clean? Would it be carpet, the tile, barbecue grills, the shower doors, that oil and rust in the driveway that's blacker than my mother but not as beautiful, or that calcium right there?
Can I put this on YouTube?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you selling?
Personality. Sure. But this sells itself, though. It's called Advantage, the Wonder Cleaner, best thing since cake and ice cream. Now, unlike Madonna, it's never been touched. So you only put 2 caps in a bottle. Well, I just come, most of your neighbors, they just get it because they like me. Y'all familiar with Tony Robbins? Yeah. See, I'm taking this course because this is how Jamie Foxx started off door-to-door. And he said 2 years of door-to-door selling is equivalent to 4 years of college communication, how you interact with different people. That's why half of the neighbors don't buy it because of work. They just get it because they like my tenacity, because they said it in an easy task going door-to-door.
How much is it?
I'm pretty sure Windex and bleach ain't never knocked on your door, made you laugh when Mom went and got the camcorder just to tape them, right? High five. That's all I'm saying. But what y'all do for a living? Y'all must be in sales too, huh? Kind of. I know, cause
All right. So, like I said, I don't agree with everything that how he went about all of that, but what'd you guys notice? Give me some of the good things.
He showed him how good it is.
You probably could have sat down and had dinner with him.
For sure could have. So, Rebecca, what were you saying?
He showed him how it benefited them by using it.
Okay, good. Like that, good. Did you catch, she asked him, what are you selling? Yeah, what did he say? Guess what you're selling when you're on the phone?
Personality.
That's right. Essentially, the reason, and I've had this same company, that Advantage, whatever it's called, I can't remember now, Advantage something. I've had 2 times they've come and knocked on my door, and I tell you what, I need to go to their training school to learn how to train somewhat or something, because like 2 different people have knocked on my door, and they're all funny as can be, like that guy was, and I end up buying the stuff. And my wife gets mad at me every time. She's like, "Why'd you buy that?" And I'm like, "Because he was funny. Like I just liked him." So, but here's the key. It wasn't about because it was funny. It's because of what? Yeah, basically is you end up liking them because of the way they made you feel. See, it's about how you make people feel is what we do, is what we are doing. And as you can make people feel good about themselves, which is why I said to you, for me, when I say, "So how long have you lived at this address?" And they answer me, and every time, I don't care what they say something different. "How long have you lived at this address?"
20 years.
20 years. Wow, that's great. Do it again. "How long have you lived here?"
2 years.
2 years. Really? That's awesome. See, my response is the same every single time. It doesn't really matter what they say. If he says 2 months, 2 months, you're kidding. Wow, where'd you move from? That 20 years. 20 years, really? Where'd you move from? Like that's why I'm saying it's a script, but does it feel like I'm using a script on you? No, and the reason it doesn't feel like I'm using a script is because it's the way that you're making the person feel about themselves that has them then go, "I like this person." So that now my whole objective on this repeat and affirm is about getting some rapport so that I can then ask my part of the script of, "Well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next?" Because if I've built rapport, they're going to tell me the truth right then. And I'm going to know either there is something going on that they're thinking about it or that they're not. Yeah. All right. What question?
Oh, I wrote one question down.
Okay.
You said you should be in the contact phase for 30 days. Why only a month?
In the context phase? So,
You made a comment.
yeah, and I guess I don't know that I would just say that that's an exact. Ultimately, what I'm saying is just that you want to get out of that phase as quick as you can. Your whole objective needs to be about getting to the point. And I guess why I'm saying that it's for a month is because if I told you tomorrow, and maybe you would be fine, but overall, I mean, we've got what, 10 or 12 people on online here. That if I said to you guys, "Hey, don't go home until you get an appointment starting tomorrow," like you might not go home for a while. And so that's part of the reason. Yeah. So that's part of the reason that I say is like, it's more of like to give yourself some time to get up to speed on it. But I want you to just start saying to yourself like, "Hey, I got to get to the point where I'm setting an appointment every single day." And part of it is there is a saying that I have used that I learned from this same training 20 something years ago, 22 years, 23 years ago. And I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly off the top of my head, but it was said by W.H. Murray. W.H. Murray actually, coincidentally, was on the expedition before they summited Everest. So he was with Sir Edmund Hillary the time before he actually summited it. W.H. Murray was with him that time. When he actually summited Everest, he wasn't with him. But something that W.H. Murray said about the experience was, and this is essentially the quote is, "Until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. But the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that never otherwise would have occurred." See, that essentially it's kind of the burn the boats thing. When you say, "I will not go home," or "I will not quit prospecting until I set an appointment," it's kind of, we burned the boats. You don't have a choice. You have to go get one. And so early on for me, how I did it, was in that contacts phase, is I had so many cards that I wanted to give away too. As part of my 50 contacts. So many of them had to be cards that I handed to people. And there were times when I would be driving home and I'd realize, oh, I still got a card in my pocket that I got to give out. And I would stop at a gas station and just walk up to somebody putting gas in their car because I'm like, where are they going to go? So I would just walk up and be like, "Hey, my name's Russ, and would you do me a favor?" Here's what I always did. And I'm not recommending this necessarily, but this is how I did it. Is if I saw Aaron putting gas in the car, I would go up and, hey, will you do me a favor? Sure. And they'll always say yes. And then I'd pull a card out. Today's world, I would already have it out of my pocket. But I just, hey, will you do me a favor? And they're going to say yes. Hey, would you just hold on to my card? If you hear of anybody thinking to buy it or selling, give me a call. And they say yes every time. And then I would turn and get in the car, drive off, and they would probably throw it in the trash. But for me, it was always, I just always helped myself feel like this is my commitment for the day, and that's what I'm going to do. So, so kind of a long answer, but I would say there's not necessarily an exact time. It's just more about get yourself out of that phase as quick as you can into the, I got to set an appointment. And then I would say from there, early on, like, so for you, if you set an appointment, even if I didn't feel like that was, like for me today, I wouldn't probably have gone on that appointment. If I was you, Ryan, I would go on the appointment. And part of why I say that is you want to get the experience, and what better practice than actually go sit down with a real legit person. Now, what will happen though is over time, you'll start to develop yeah, I'm not going on that because I could just tell it's not going to work. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's the main reason I guess I would say that is like a month is just, it's too easy to get complacent and let yourself stay in well, I'm making my 30 contacts every day, so I'm good. But if you really want to make the money, then you got to say, I got to get to a number of appointments. And even if you had to do it, probably this is the way I should even say it. I keep forgetting, I've erased it. But part of getting to that appointments phase may even be just initially saying, I got to get 3 a week. And I have to work on Saturday if I don't get the one I have to prospect on Saturday, which a lot of agents don't prospect on Saturday. So for me, it would be, I have to prospect on Saturday if I don't have 3 appointments by Friday. So just have some type of that's how I would say to transition it. Because the hard part is a month for some of you might be too soon to say, I'm not going home until I get an appointment every day. But you could do, I'm going to do 3 a week no matter what. And if you do that and you could get 3 on Monday, then you can go, okay, now I don't have to stress so much or whatever. So that makes sense? So, yeah.
So in the wake of not really going on just with COVID and all this stuff, what are your suggestions about platforms to lead generate?
Well, the only other option you have is the phone.
So, I mean, but this, like, what resources do I need to have? There's not a phone book.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. So probably there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is go to a title company and you can ask them if they can give you a list of numbers, based on an area or whatever. And it's been a while since I've gone and asked them that, but that's one of the options. The good news is I told Rebecca that about notice of defaults, and she got a list from them. So that was good. So I wasn't sure that they would still do it. But same thing with this, as it used to be, I would always just go to a title company and say, can you give me a list of 2,000 names and phone numbers? And they would give me a list with that. So yeah, that was the second one, is that if you sign up for the RedX and do it through the company, because you get a discount. So do it through, talk to Andrew or Jeanette. The RedX will give you geo leads where you can say, I want names and phone numbers for an area, and then they'll give you phone numbers. Is the other way that I would say to do it. So, and I mean, me personally, I don't know. You might have to have a little bit of thick skin, but I still think you can go knock on doors. Like I would just say when you do, just step back and be 10 feet or 15, maybe even off the porch kind of a thing, enough away that. And just know you're going to probably have some people that still yell at you, and you shouldn't be out doing this and stuff. But
I saw Girl Scout door to door off.
You can do it, yeah. So anyway, that's the other thing that I would say is, like, to some extent, I think people would be more okay with it. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on it? But I mean, I just feel like, especially if you step back, then I think giving them a little bit of room to where they don't feel like again, you're probably going to have some people that still are like, I can't believe you'd come out and do this right now. And just yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Like, that's why I stepped clear back here is, but there's people that, especially if you approach it the way that I was saying, like if you find a listing that's a Century 21 listing in the area, and I knock on their door and step back like this, and just, if they yelled at me, and I would just blame it on, hey, I'm just trying to help your neighbor get their home sold. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And I apologize if I, scared you at all or whatever, put you in a fearful spot. I'm just trying to help them get their home sold and was hoping you would know of somebody. And then they're going to say, well, I don't. Okay, well, I appreciate you thinking about it. Any thoughts for you moving? No, we're not. And then I just go right into the script. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyway. All right, what else? Questions? All right.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in your dialogue, after hearing that he was staying in his home for 10 years, you switched into the investment script.
Yeah.
But as a new agent, how would you even help them with investment properties when you don't even know how to invest yourself?
Great question. So the good news is you don't need to know necessarily how to invest yourself. Ultimately, what the biggest thing is going to be is really, so let's say that he had said yes to that appointment, he called and talked to the lender and the lender approved him. Then basically what I would want to do is just go talk to him about, okay, what area do we want to look in? What price range? Do you want a duplex? Do you want a single family? And just so that you guys know, and this is probably enough for what you would need to know, is ultimately there's pluses and minuses to as an investor buying a single family home versus buying a duplex. Now, I've got an uncle, and so where I learned this from is I've got an uncle who owned a bunch of investment properties. And so I went to him one day and said, you mostly do duplexes. I've heard other people that like doing single family. Why do you do duplexes versus a single family? And here's what he said to me, is there's pluses and minuses to that. And so really, if you think of this same pluses and minuses, the same concept would apply to a fourplex or a triplex or an apartment building even. But what he said is you have to just decide what's more important to you. A single family home, you're going to tend to get people who will want to be there longer because they probably have a family and they want to get the kids into school and want to keep them around longer. The downside to it, though, is when that property goes vacant, you're 100% vacant. Versus on a duplex, if one side goes vacant, you're only 50% vacant. You're still collecting rent from the other one. The downside on the duplex or a triplex or a fourplex is going to be you're typically probably getting a 2-bedroom, 1-bath kind of a place that as soon as they have a kid or two, they want to move out. And so anyway, so really, I guess that's what Simran, that's what I would be saying is what you want to be doing is that's the conversation I would be having with somebody is just, hey, here's your different options. And ultimately what we're looking for though is what kind of a return are they wanting to get on it. And what I mean by that is if their payments, let's just keep the numbers easy, say $1,000, we need to find one that they could rent for however much they want to make, $1,200 or $1,500, so that they've got that little bit of a difference. But I will tell you the difference on that of them being able to get some cash flow on it, they're going to have to put more down to get that cash flow to take place. So I don't know if that for sure answers the question, but ultimately what I would just say is really it's a matter of, and I wouldn't get too into figuring out what they can rent it for. I would more tell them like jump on KSL and see what homes in that area are renting for and that kind of a thing. So anyway, that answer help?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks, Russ.
Cool. All right, what else? If nothing else, we're gonna wrap up for today right there. And then, so what we're gonna do on Thursday, so Thursday will be day 2 of this. And what we're gonna do on Thursday is I'm gonna pull up and show to you, I probably should have even done it today, but I'm gonna show you, NAR does a survey every year. I'm gonna show you the survey they do of buyers and sellers to show you how people choose their agent. And then from there, we're gonna make a list on the board of all the different ways you can prospect. And then we're going to go through and talk about how to prospect based on like how to do for sale by owner, how to do the expired. And we're just going to walk you through that process. But today was all about really all of this stuff. You're going to use those same things, those same skills in doing it with those. But we'll just talk about what the process looks like so that you can decide which of those you want to go and do. So, make sense? Okay. Well, hey, thanks for being here. And we'll see you on Thursday, if not before. Yep.